I want to say something to you that nobody around you has been honest enough to say. You are not stuck because of what happened to you. You are not stuck because of the economy or the timing or the people who did not show up or the opportunities that did not arrive. You are not stuck because life dealt you a harder hand than most. And you are definitely not stuck because you are less capable or less deserving or less equipped for the life you want than anyone else walking this earth. You are stuck because of something much closer than any of those things. Something so specific and so personal and so completely within your power to change that the moment you finally see it clearly. You will not feel defeated by it. You will feel something far more powerful than that. You will feel ready to stop managing the symptoms of being stuck and finally address the actual cause. Ready to stop applying solutions to problems that were never the real problem. Ready to have the one honest conversation with yourself that every strategy and every fresh start and every motivational speech has been dancing around without ever quite arriving at. Because the truth about why you are still stuck is not complicated. It is not hidden behind years of complex psychological excavation. It is not waiting at the end of a long and difficult journey of self-discovery. It is right here, right now, in the next few minutes of complete honesty between you and yourself. And it starts with being willing to hear something true, even if it is uncomfortable. Because the truth that unsticks you was never going to feel comfortable. It was only ever going to feel necessary. I want to begin with something that is going to challenge the way you have been thinking about your situation, not to minimize what you have been through, not to dismiss the very real and very legitimate difficulties that have made your journey harder than it needed to be, but because the most compassionate thing I can offer you today is not agreement with the story that has been keeping you stuck. It is the honest truth that could finally set you free from it. Here is the truth. You are not stuck because of your situation. You are stuck because of what you decided your situation means. And I want you to sit with that distinction for a moment before your mind rushes to defend itself. Because there is a profound and life-changing difference between a circumstance and an interpretation of a circumstance. The circumstance is what happened. The interpretation is the meaning you assign to what happened. And while you may have had very little control over the circumstance itself, the interpretation has always been yours. Completely and entirely yours. And it is the interpretation, not the circumstance, that is determining what you believe is possible for you from this point forward. Think about two people facing the exact same difficult situation, the same loss, the same failure, the same unexpected derailment of a plan they had invested everything in. One person looks at that situation and the meaning they extract from it is, this is evidence that I am not capable. This is proof that the thing I wanted is not available to me. This is a sign that I should stop reaching in this direction. And from that meaning, they stop moving. They contract. They protect. They get stuck. The other person looks at the exact same situation and the meaning they extract is completely different. This is information. This is redirection. This is the specific difficulty that is building the specific capability I am going to need for the next chapter. And from that meaning, they keep moving. Not because the situation was less painful, not because the loss was less real, but because the interpretation they chose created a completely different set of possibilities than the interpretation the first person accepted. Same situation, completely different lives, because of meaning, because of interpretation, because of the story that got built around the circumstance, rather than the circumstance itself. And here is what this means for you right now. The situation you have been pointing to as the reason you are stuck is real, but it is not the prison. The meaning you assign to it is the prison, and meanings can be changed, not by pretending the situation was not difficult, not by toxic positivity that dismisses the genuine weight of what you experienced, but by asking one honest question that the stuck version of you has never been willing to ask. What if this situation does not mean what I decided it means? We have talked about interpretation and how the meaning you assign to your situation has always been more responsible for keeping you stuck than the situation itself ever was. And now I want to talk about something that is both more practical and more immediately urgent than anything else we will discuss today. Something that most motivational conversations completely ignore because it does not fit neatly into the narrative of pure willpower and relentless determination, and the idea that the right mindset alone is sufficient to overcome anything. Something that is not a weakness to acknowledge, but actually requires a specific kind of courage to admit honestly. I want to talk about your energy, not in a vague or abstract sense, not as a metaphor for enthusiasm or passion or motivation. I mean your actual, literal, physical, and emotional energy, the resource that everything else in your life depends on, the foundation beneath every decision, every effort, every attempt to build something better than what currently exists. Because here's something that nobody in the self-improvement space wants to say directly, but that I believe with complete conviction is one of the primary real reasons most people stay stuck. You are exhausted. Not lazy, not undisciplined, not lacking in desire or vision or genuine commitment to the life you're trying to build. Exhausted, running on a tank that has been operating below empty for so long that the depletion itself has become normalized. So familiar that you no longer recognize it as depletion. You have simply adjusted your expectations of yourself downward to match the reduced output of a person operating on borrowed energy and called it realistic. Think about the last time you felt genuinely restored, not just rested after a night of sleep that was shorter than it should have been, but truly deeply, completely restored in a way that made everything feel possible and clear and manageable. The kind of energy where your thinking is sharp and your emotions are stable and your capacity for patience and creativity and bold decision-making is operating at its full potential. When was the last time you felt that? For some people in this conversation, that memory is months old. For others, it is years. And in the space between that memory and this moment, an enormous amount of life has been attempted from a place of profound depletion. And here is what chronic depletion does to a life that is trying to change. It makes everything harder than it actually is. The obstacle that a fully restored version of you would navigate with relative clarity becomes an insurmountable wall to the depleted version. The decision that would take a well-rested mind 20 minutes to make clearly takes an exhausted mind days of agonizing and still produces no certainty. The step that would feel bold and exciting and completely worth the risk from a place of genuine energy feels terrifying and overwhelming. We have talked about interpretation and how the meaning you assign to your situation has been the real prison rather than the situation itself. We have talked about energy and how the depletion that has become normalized in your life has been making everything harder than it actually needs to be. And now I want to talk about something that is uniquely relevant to the world we are living in right now, something that has created an entirely new category of being stuck that is particularly difficult to recognize because it looks almost identical to genuine progress from every external angle, something that the age of social media and personal branding and the constant visibility of everyone's growth journey has made not just possible, but almost inevitable for anyone paying enough attention to the world around them. I want to talk about performing growth, and I need you to understand what I mean by that phrase before your mind immediately concludes that this does not apply to you. Because performing growth is not something that only happens to people who are consciously putting on a show. It is not limited to those who are deliberately projecting an image that does not match their reality. It happens to deeply sincere people, people who genuinely want to change, people who are authentically committed to becoming better versions of themselves, people who would never describe what they are doing as performance because from the inside it does not feel like performance at all. It feels like effort. It feels like progress. It feels like finally doing the work. But here is what performing growth actually looks like in practice. It looks like consuming enormous amounts of content about the changes you have not yet made. It looks like talking about your growth journey with more energy and more detail than you are actually investing in the journey itself. It looks like building the aesthetic of transformation, the journal, the morning routine, the vision board, the carefully curated inputs, while carefully and unconsciously avoiding the specific internal work that would produce the actual transformation those things are meant to represent. It looks like doing everything that transformation looks like from the outside while leaving completely untouched the one thing on the inside that actually needs to change. And the reason this particular pattern is so difficult to break is because it produces real feelings. The content you consume genuinely inspires you. The conversations about your growth genuinely energize you. The morning routine genuinely makes you feel like you are moving. And those feelings of inspiration and energy and movement are real. They are not fake. But they are not transformation. They are the feeling of transformation without the substance of it. And the gap between those two things is exactly where the being stuck lives. We have talked about interpretation and how the meaning you assign to your situation created the prison rather than the situation itself. We have talked about the depletion that has been making everything harder than it needs to be and the courage it takes to actually restore yourself instead of pushing through empty. We have talked about performing growth and how the feeling of changing and the reality of changing are two completely different experiences that can coexist for years without ever producing actual transformation. And now I want to talk about something that operates completely outside of your psychology and completely outside of your mindset and completely outside of every internal landscape we have been examining so far. Something external, something physical, something so immediately present in your daily experience that it has become completely invisible through sheer familiarity. I want to talk about your environment. And I want to start with something that I believe is one of the most underestimated truths in the entire conversation about human potential. You are not separate from your environment. You are not a self-contained unit of willpower and intention that operates independently of the physical and social and informational spaces you inhabit every single day. You are in a continuous and deeply intimate relationship with everything around you, the spaces you spend time in, the sounds and images and information that enter your awareness on a daily basis, the energy of the people you are physically surrounded by, the visual cues in your immediate environment that either activate your highest intentions or quietly reinforce your most comfortable patterns. All of it is constantly, silently, and powerfully shaping what feels normal, what feels possible, and what feels like the natural and appropriate level of effort and ambition for someone living inside this particular life. And here is the devastating truth about environments that are misaligned with the life you are trying to build. They do not announce their misalignment. They do not send you a signal that says this. Space is working against everything you are attempting to become. They simply normalize. They take whatever is consistently present and make it feel like the baseline, the standard, the natural temperature of existence. And when that baseline is set below the level your potential requires, when the environment you have normalized is calibrated for comfort rather than growth, every effort you make to rise above it feels like swimming upstream, not because you lack the strength, but because the current you are swimming against is invisible. Think about the environment you spend the most time in right now, not the ideal environment, the actual one, the physical space where you do your most important thinking and your most significant work. We have talked about interpretation and the prison, built from meaning rather than circumstance. We have talked about the depletion that has been quietly undermining every attempt to build something better. We have talked about performing growth and the dangerous gap between feeling like you are changing and actually changing. We have talked about the environment that has been normalized around a version of yourself you have been trying to leave. And now I want to talk about something that I believe is one of the most subtle and most universally practiced forms of being stuck that exists, something that looks so much like progress that most people who are doing it have absolutely no idea that what they are actually doing is standing still, something that feels like beginning but functions like avoidance, something that produces all the emotional energy of a fresh start while quietly ensuring that the destination those fresh starts are pointed toward remains permanently out of reach. I want to talk about starting over. And I want you to think about how many times you have done this, not in a judgmental way, but in a genuinely honest, clearly examined way. How many times have you built something, the habit, a practice, a commitment, a version of yourself that was genuinely moving in the right direction, and then at some point, for some reason that felt completely justified in the moment, abandoned it, and then after a period of inaction that felt uncomfortable, enough to produce a new surge of motivation, started again, fresh, clean, with renewed energy and a slightly adjusted approach and the genuine feeling that this time, something was different. This time the conditions were better. This time the version of the plan was more refined. This time the commitment was more real. And then the cycle repeated. Because here is what starting over actually does that. Nobody talks about honestly. Every time you abandon a current attempt and begin again, you do not return to zero. You return to below zero. Because you do not just lose the progress you made. You lose something more valuable than progress. You lose the compound interest of consistency. The specific, irreplaceable accumulation of small wins and learned lessons and built capacity that only exists on the other side of a sustained commitment that was never interrupted. And that compound interest cannot be replaced by a better plan or a fresher start, or a more motivated version of the beginning. It can only be built by continuing. Think about every significant thing you have tried to build in your life that has not yet been built, and trace the history of each attempt honestly. We have walked through every honest layer of why you are still stuck. We have talked about the interpretation that built the prison, the depletion that drained the foundation, the performance of growth that replaced the experience of it, the environment that normalized limitation, the pattern of starting over that has been protecting you from the discomfort of continuing. And now we have arrived at the final point, the one that makes everything we have discussed not just insightful, but actually useful, the one that takes every layer of honest examination we have done together and collapses it into the single most important truth I can leave you with. You are not stuck because you are broken. You are stuck because you have been solving the wrong problem. And I want you to feel the full weight of that statement, because most people who have been stuck for any significant length of time have developed a very specific and very damaging relationship with their own stuckness. They have begun to experience it as evidence of something fundamentally wrong with them, as proof that they are somehow less capable, less deserving, less equipped for the life they want than the people around them who appear to be moving. And from that place of self-judgment, they keep applying solutions to problems that were never the real problem. Better strategies to a situation that never needed a better strategy. More discipline to a life that never lacked discipline but has been lacking honesty. More motivation to an engine that was never missing fuel but was pointed in the wrong direction entirely. The real problem is almost always simpler and more personal than any strategy could address. It is almost always a single honest conversation you have been avoiding with yourself. A single truth about your situation, your patterns, your choices, or your direction that you have been circling around without ever landing on directly. And that truth, however uncomfortable, however inconvenient, however completely it disrupts the story you have been telling, is the only thing that has ever been capable of actually moving you. Because when you finally identify the real problem, everything else reorganizes itself around the solution with a speed and a clarity that no amount of strategy applied to the wrong problem could ever produce. You were never broken, and the life you want was never out of reach. You were simply answering the wrong question. And the moment you ask the right one, everything that has been stuck finally begins to move. So let me leave you with this. Everything we talked about today, and the interpretation, the depletion, the performance, the environment, the starting over, the wrong problem, none of it was meant to add weight to what you are already carrying. Every single layer we examined was meant to do one thing and one thing only. Remove weight. Remove the false explanations. Remove the misdirected effort. Remove the strategies applied to problems that were never real, and leave you standing in front of the actual truth about your situation with nothing between you and it except the decision about what you do next. And that decision is simple. Not easy, but simple. Stop solving the wrong problem. Stop performing the growth you are not yet experiencing. Stop starting over when what you need is to continue. Stop normalizing the environment that was built for a version of yourself you have already outgrown. Stop running on empty and calling it discipline. And stop assigning meanings to your circumstances that were never accurate and never permanent and never had the authority over your future that you gave them. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not uniquely and permanently disqualified from the life you have been trying to build. You are simply someone who has been applying enormous amounts of genuine effort and genuine desire and genuine commitment to the wrong diagnosis. And the moment that changes, the moment you identify the real problem and bring your full honest attention to it, the stuckness that has felt so permanent begins to dissolve with a speed that will genuinely surprise you. Because stuckness was never your identity. It was always just a problem waiting for the right question, and you just found it.